We're going to pick up where we left off last week. If you weren't able to join us last week, go online. The sermon's there. We're just going to pick up because we're talking about clear thinking about our finances. And I have not been asked this, but you probably are thinking this, or if you haven't, you probably thought something like it. That sounds like we're having a financial planning seminar, and is that really appropriate for a Sunday morning sermon? And I think it is, because Jesus talked more about hell than he did heaven, and one of the things he talked even as much or more is about finances, material possession, money. Luke 16, beginning around verse 11, "So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? No servant can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." And that's true. And so I think it's important for us to talk about our finances, to talk about money in the church. Not necessarily to get more money in the coffers of the church treasury, as much as it is to put God first in our lives. That's what's important, is putting God's first in our lives. Last week we talked about we did 3 of the 5 habits for financial clear thinking. The first one, and so you got the same outline, but I filled in the blank for 2 or 3 of those. The first one is to earn an honest living. Earn an honest living. That's the principle of work. John Gregory and I and Gypsy went to Billy's to take care of some stuff a couple weeks ago, and after we got done, we went to a place to eat and saw a couple of people doing hard work that day. Liz and Scott over at New York Pizza. They are running that place, and good pizza, by the way. And if you're one of those people that go to, just a side note, and just a little bit of a plug, a 16-inch pizza at Papa John's is nothing like a 16-inch pizza at New York Pizza. I thought we'd order a 22-inch pizza. That was a mistake, wasn't it, Gypsy? Boy, we took half of that home with us. Hard work, an honest living. God gave us something to do. God created, I want you to think about this. God created the heavens and the earth, right? He brought everything into existence. And then he took the extra, did something different. He went the extra diligent mile, if you want to say, to create us. He just didn't speak us into existence. He formed us from the dirt of the earth that he already created. And then he breathed into us his life. And then he created us, and then he placed us in this perfect garden to take care of. Listen, to take care of, to tend. They had 2 jobs: to be fruitful and multiply, and to take care of the garden. Which means to me that when we pass from this place to where God places us, in His presence, you can say in the heavens, you can say, but there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, there's going to be a new sky and a new earth, there's going to be a new Jerusalem. Okay, we can debate that for a long time, but here's the thing. I'm not going to be sitting on some cloud, stroking a harp, looking for something to do. How boring would that be? What's that? I didn't say playing music. I'm just saying, can you imagine? I came home Friday from Phoenix, and Saturday I just decided, I was just going to veg out. About 7 o'clock I got done vegging out, and I had to go cut the grass outside. which is probably a good thing for my health. The grass outside in some places is getting as high as my knee. It's amazing what God's rain will do on the earth in the desert, isn't it? Have you noticed how green the mountains are? I'm not cutting those. But we are just born to work. Now here's the thing, they didn't have to worry about pulling weeds out of the garden. Okay? They didn't have to worry about irrigating because dew just appeared. They didn't have to worry about feeding nutrients into the soil because the soil had not been tainted with sin yet. Just had to tend it, take care of it. We were designed by God to work. The principle of work is all about the fact that God has made a provision for us. I think I said last week that you're just waiting for God to provide for you. And I think I also responded by, hey, get a job. By the way, unemployment will be running out soon. The extra stuff from unemployment in some states, and particularly Arizona, has already run out. Get a job. Make an honest, hard. Pastor, you don't know how difficult it is to get up every morning and get dressed and brush your teeth and comb your hair. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I do it every day. I got up about 5:30 this morning so I could be down here at 7. How many of you are down here at 7 o'clock? Oh, okay, nobody. How many of you want to be here at 7 o'clock in the morning? Okay, I see it's just as many hands that went up. I can't think of any better place I'd want to be than with the people of God. So, if I want you to notice this, 2 Thessalonians 3:10. Don't you remember the rule we had when we lived with you? If you don't work, you don't eat. It doesn't say if you can't work. It says if you won't work. If you won't work. See, God wants us to earn an honest living. And we're going to talk about workaholics towards the end. Then I said you need to plan your spending. Plan your spending. That's the principle of budget. What did I say? Somebody said that money talks. It doesn't. It just walks away quietly. If you don't plan just how you're going to spend your money, you wake up not knowing where your money went to. I thought I had more money in the bank. You know the principle of banking, right? Just because you have checks in your checkbook doesn't necessarily mean you have money in your bank account. Some people believe if they have checks in their checkbooks, they have money in their bank account. And when they go to write a check and there's no money in the checking account, or you go to take money out of your ATM, or you go to put your debit card down to pay for your food and you can't pay for your food and you wonder where your money went, it's because you're not budgeting. You're not telling your money what you want it to do. It's just walking away. It just does. How does your money walk away? Anybody been standing at the cash register and look around and see that payday bar just staring at you? Two for the price of one? Anybody? Maybe not a payday bar. I like $100,000 bars, but I can't find them except usually at Halloween. Those are good things. Or nutrageous bars. Ooh, those are good. It just walks away. The word sell is another 4-letter word in the English vocabulary that is a dirty word. If it's on sale, we have to have it, right? Well, the starting point is keeping good records. I need to know what I own, which are my assets. I need to know what I owe, which are my liabilities. I need to know what I earn, which is my income. But more importantly, I need to know where it's all going. So, and this goes back to another principle called yearning versus earning. Yearning versus earning. Your yearning will always exceed your earning. You following what I'm saying? Your yearnings, now it shouldn't. Some of us have maybe some of us have good handles on our yearnings. But if we're not careful, our yearnings will probably exceed our earnings, and that's when we get in trouble. Anybody have a mortgage? Well, we've got to have a place to live, and trust me, I think property is a better investment than renting. But there's some responsibilities go with that. When your hot water heater goes out, you got to replace it. You can't call the landlord to come and fix it. But it's interesting to see the value of our home. When it was first on the market back in the 60s, early 60s, I don't think it was more than about $4,000. I don't remember. Do you remember? You can't buy a car for $4,000 today. A used car, a good used car for $4,000 you can't get today. But one of the things we had, I'm going to digress. Please follow, just allow me this liberty just a little bit. I got just a little bit of time here. We stayed at a very nice home in California, and this couple put us up for a long time until we found a place of our own. And it's a beautiful home. It was it was on an English Tudor type home, and I think it was 6,000 square feet in size, maybe a little larger than that. 3 stories. Fourth, if you want to count the roof, because they had a 5. Oh yeah, they had a basement cellar someplace. Yeah. I think it was supposed to be designed as a wine cellar, but they didn't drink, so they turned it into something else. Anyway, now I'm rattling. It's a nice home. I don't think I could afford to furnish the home, let alone pay for the upkeep, and that would have been a whole lot more home than we could afford. We got a real estate agent involved. We were looking at a home, and we know what we could afford, and we knew what we qualified for, and what we qualified for we could not afford. You understand where I'm going with that? And we kept getting shown houses that we could not afford, but we qualified for. What does that tell you? We had to make a decision to stick to our guns and get what we can afford. Stick to our gun, and so what we earn could work for us, as opposed to our yearning of what we wanted. Does that make sense? If we didn't have a budget, and somebody told me you can afford X amount of dollars for a home, you qualify for that. But you don't realize you're taking 75% of your income to pay for that. You're in trouble. So there's that theory. It says, plan carefully, and you'll have plenty. Act too quickly, you won't have enough. Then I told you needed to save for the future. Earn, plan, and save. Save for the future. This is where we stopped last Sunday. This is the principle of investing. The wise man saves for the future, the proverb says. Money that comes easily disappears quickly, and money that is generated little by little grows. If I could just win the lottery, right? If I could just win the lottery. A Tampa Bay newspaper in Florida did a study of Floridians who won the lottery. They discovered that 70% of lottery winners were bankrupt within 3 years. Why is that? Because number one, they didn't earn it. They didn't earn it. Trust me, when you earn something, it becomes important to see where it goes, right? Doesn't it frustrate you that you don't know where your money went? You worked so hard for it. Where did it go? And then when you find out, you've overextended. But then you put a budget together so that you don't overextend yourself, right? But if you didn't know how much was coming with, and all of a sudden you come into this big thing, you don't have a plan, you don't have a budget, you don't know what you're going to do with it. You didn't save any of it. You just thought it would just stay there forever, right? 70% go bankrupt. Bankrupt. They weren't bankrupt to begin with, but they were bankrupt afterwards. The reason we don't save, you know the reason we don't save? The reason we don't save is because we've got to have it right now. We got to have it right now. And I don't know if this is a generational thing. I can't speak to that. I just do not know. So I can't. I don't know that it's a generational thing, but it may be a short circuit in our brain, or we just not adding 2 and 2 and getting 4 when we do that. We add 2 and 2 and we get 5, so we think we have an extra penny to spend. I don't know, but I think churches get themselves in trouble because they want something now, and why not just go in debt to get it? Why not go in debt to get it? Because we want it now. When I first came to this church, they had a building program, and I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty details. They already had a mortgage of over $300,000 they were paying on. They're paying on a mortgage $300,000, and I'm looking at some of you that were around 20 years ago, about anywhere from $250,000 to $300,000. And at the time they needed the space, they needed more classrooms and a lot of things going on. That's before I got here, so they tried to enter into a building program. Turnkey in $1990. Turnkey. They were going to take the old debt, roll it into the new debt. Turnkey would have been right around $1 million for that. That means every month, before they did anything, they'd had to come up with at least $10,000 to $20,000 to pay off their debt for 30 years. I'm looking at Virginia, I'm looking at Sid. I'm in the ballpark, I think, right? And when they asked me about whether I wanted to be their pastor, be their pastor, my first question is, what are you doing with your debt? What do you mean? You have a debt of $250,000 already, $300,000. What are you doing about your debt? Within 1 year, this church was able to pay off their debt. And it's a good thing we were able to pay off our debt. We owe nothing on our property. We owe nothing on our building. Can you imagine what would have happened in 2007, 2008, 2009 time frame when everything crashed? And we had 12 families that had to leave town to find a living someplace else. 12 families had to leave Tucson to find someplace else for employment. What would that have done to our church? Debt. So savings is about investing in the future. We want it now. But take a look what the Bible says. Solomon says, take a lesson from the ants, you lazy bones. Learn from their ways and become wise. Though they have no prince, governor, or a ruler to make them work, they labor hard all summer, gathering food for the winter. We need 3 kinds of financial goals. We need a savings goal in our lives. We need a spending goal. And then we also need a giving goal. That leads us to the 4th principle. The fourth principle is to return 10% back to God. This is called the principle of tithing. Well, Pastor, what's a 10%? I mean, how can I live on 90% of my income? J.C. Penney's lived on 10% of his income and gave 90% away. Oh, but I don't know how much money you make, but if I made $10 million, I certainly could live on $1 million a year and give 9 million away, right? Wrong. You know what? You know what your standard of living is when you are making $10 million a year? You want to know? You're spending $12 million a year. We just do. That's what we do as Americans. Return 10% to God. This is the principle of tithing. And God says for us to give the first 10% of everything that I make back to Him. Look at Malachi. If you are of an Italian descent, you might call it Malachi. But take a look at Malachi, the prophet. God's talking to Malachi in chapter 3, verse 10. Bring to the storehouse a full tenth of what you earn, so there will be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord all-powerful. I will open the windows of heaven for you and pour out all the blessings you are greedy for. Is that what it says? Greedy for? It says all the blessings you, what's the word? Need. Why do we tithe? To honor Him as number one in our lives, to show that He has priority in our lives. The reason I give is to show there's a priority in my life, to put God in charge of my money. Remember, there was not too long ago, there was a commercial called the Pepsi Challenge. Remember that? 2 sodas. 2 cola products. Also, that was probably about the time cola made the mistake of changing their formula, but that's neither here nor there. Take the Pepsi Challenge. See which one you like best, right? This is God's Pepsi Challenge. Test me on this. I challenge you to test me on this. Well, doesn't it say in Deuteronomy, I think around chapter 6, 13 or 16, I don't know the exact. Jesus tells Satan, all of this could be yours. Or no, he takes him to the temple and says, didn't God promise that He would protect you? And Jesus says, no. You got the verse wrong. He will be with me. But He says, don't put the Lord thy God to the test. Right? And yet, God here in Malachi, He says, test me on this. God Himself says, put me first in your life and see what happens in your life. I'm setting you up. I'm going to let you know ahead of time. This is a setup question, so don't get mad at me. Do you trust God with your salvation? I trust God with my salvation. I don't see a whole lot of hands going up, but I trust God for my salvation. Now, do you trust God with your money? You know, if we can't trust God with our money, we can't trust God with our salvation. Tithe is an Old Testament law, and I live by New Testament principles today. We'll edit that out someplace so it sounds better. Listen, the Old Testament says start with 10%. The New Testament says, what do you got left? Give it all. Give everything. Whoa, wait a minute. Where does that say that? When the saints were gathered together in Jerusalem, they saw the needs. Everyone took what they needed, and they gave everything else to the poor. Everything else. So the New Testament is, what do you need to live on? Then you give everything else to God. Well, wait a minute. No. I think I like the 10% better. And I always get asked, do I tithe on the gross or do I tithe on the net? What do you want to be blessed with? How do you want to be blessed? Do you want to be blessed on your gross, or do you want to be blessed on your net? See, because if you're going to give your net, He's going to bless the net. But most of us give the net, we use the net as our giving, and we want to be blessed on the gross. And it doesn't work that way. Take a look at Malachi. It says, put me to the test. Try me. Well, why did God say 10%? Why does God... I don't know, okay? You can look in Scripture, and if you can find out why, share it with me. Why did God say 10%? I don't know. I just have to tell you, I don't know, and I don't know if the Scripture tells us that. But God said it. And so we start our giving at that. But the truth is, God owns it all anyway. Listen to me. God owns it all anyway. And so for the 60, 70, 80, 90 plus years, we get to dabble with some of the things God gave us. And what happens after that amount of time when we pass? How much of it are you going to take to heaven with you? Not a dime, folks. Naked did I come into the world, and naked will I go. It's just because the mortician decides to clothe you in case you have an open casket. I don't mean to get morbid, but the reality is, guess what? Those clothes go away and shred, and there's nothing but dust in the bottom of that casket eventually, right? I don't know why 10%, but everything comes from God. And let me give you some reasons why I tithe, why I give. And I say Gina and I are one, and she helps me stay accountable on this. First of all, I tithe out of the gratitude of my past. Out of the gratitude of my past. It represents my heart. All that I have has come from Him. My salvation has come from Him. My very life has come from Him. And to give just 10% back is nothing more than a token gratitude. And not just a tithe, but the first part. You know, everybody talks about Cain and Abel, right? Abel's sacrifice was accepted by God, and Cain's wasn't. And Cain had a grain offering, and Abel had an animal offering, a sacrifice. And there's a lot made about the grain and the animal offering, right? Here's what I suspect. Abel gave his best before God. Abel gave the first part, the best, to God. And I think I can show this in Scripture. Cain gave what was left over to God. That's why Abel's offering was accepted more so than Cain's. And what happened? Cain got mad at Abel and killed his brother. The first family that God ever created. The first family, those brothers were at odds with one another. And let me tell you something, there's a spiritual battle going on within us, and sometimes the flesh will do whatever it can to destroy the spirit. Abel represents what's done in the spirit, Cain represents what's done in the flesh. It's a gratitude. People are more selfish about money than anything else. We get nervous when we talk about giving. There's a nerve that goes from our hearts to our wallet. Some of you have taken your wallet from your left side of your pants and put it over here in the right part so it has to travel further. But there's a nerve that's connected from the heart to this. When you start talking about money, people start twitching and squirming. He knows just how much time we spend. God knows how much time we spend earning it. He knows how much time we take spending it, saving it, using it, investing it, and worrying about it, pay it, and repay it. He just wants to be number one in this primary area of your life, and He's saying, trust me with it. I also tithe as a statement of the priority of the present. I can't say God is number one in my life if I'm not giving. If I can't trust God with the first 10% of my income, I'm saying I can't trust God. I'll see what's left over, and if I have enough to give, I'll do it. Trust me, you never will. I have counseled people over and over again, and people will say, I don't have enough money to give 10%. I don't have enough right now as it is. You know what? I can't afford not to. I can tell you our rent was almost $500 at seminary. Tuition was well over $700 a semester plus, and that was in 1988. It's much higher now. It's probably 4 times that now, maybe higher. We are living in Marin County, next to Manhattan. Marin County was the highest area of income. I mean, it was the highest cost of living in the United States other than Manhattan. My son went to kindergarten with parents who wrote and produced and directed episodes of Sesame Street. People who work in Silicon Valley lived in Marin County. And we made sure that we gave God the first part of our income because there's no way we could have stayed there otherwise. Making what? Less than $800 a month in Marin County in 1988. How many of you could live on $800 a month in 1988, let alone being in Marin County? So, and we had to pay for utilities too. He wants to be number one in our lives, in our relationships, in our time, and in our money. And by not tithing, I'm saying I don't believe He's able to do what He says He's able to do. The third reason I tithe is it's a statement of my faith for my future. What I'm saying when I'm giving, I'm saying that I trust Him to take care of me, no matter what comes up. Because it's not my problem to figure out, it's His problem to figure out. I don't know how I can love at 90%, but it's not my job to worry about it. It's God's job to worry about it. He says, trust me on this. And I'm not trying to be flippant here. I'm not trying to guilt you into anything. I'm just saying I tithe because of my past. It reminds me of where I came from. I tithe now because I want God to be number one right now, today. And I tithe because down the road, I need His help. Folks, if you don't need God's help today, why would He want to help you tomorrow? He's taken care of my past. He's with me now in the present. And I've got to depend on Him for the future. How many of you know what tomorrow holds? Anybody? Do you have a schedule? Do you have a to-do list for tomorrow? You got some rough plans maybe for tomorrow? Yeah, I got to get up and brush my teeth. Okay, good. That's a good start. Some of you are going to put on makeup. Maybe put on a little bit more. Hey, if the barn needs painting, paint it. I don't know what your plans are. I have plans for tomorrow. But do I know for a fact that those plans are going to pan out? You never know. I trust God to take care of these things. One of the hardest things for me in my life is try to make sure I have the right priorities going forward. I can't do anything about the past. And trust me, I've learned a long time just not to worry about it because I can't relive it. But when somebody calls you late in the afternoon and wants to talk about Jesus, trust me, that's a priority. That's a priority. And I don't know what's going to come up that I'm missing down the road. I don't know what plans I might have had. God's got to take care of that. If I can't trust Him with my finances, how can I trust Him to save me from my sins? There's a spiritual connection here. This is why we talk about that during Sunday services. When do I tithe? Well, let's see. 1 Corinthians 16 says, on every Lord's Day, each of you should put aside something from what you have earned during the week for this offering. The amount depends on how much the Lord has helped you earn. The amount depends on how much the Lord has helped you earn. Listen, what Paul is saying here, because keep in mind, people live day to day. We now sometimes get a salary, you get a monthly salary. So it doesn't matter. But what Paul is saying, what we do, the reason we give is also an act of worship. It's what we do. We baptize. It's what we do. We do the Lord's Supper. It's what we do. We sing songs. It's what we do. One of the things we do is exercise our giving. And as I say every week, we're going to pass the plate every week. Whether you put anything in it is not the point. It's a reminder that God has given you everything you have, and we get the privilege to give some of that back and watch God explode in our lives. How many of you want God to explode in your life? You go, well, that's kind of messy, Pastor. You know, I'm one of those guys. I'm one of those gals. Everything's got to be planned out. I'm not sure that I really, really want God exploding in my life. When God explodes in your life, it's messy sometimes. But what a great thing when God shows up and does something greater than we could ever imagine happening in our lives. Remember Jonathan? Jonathan and Saul. They were the Philistines, and this was after Goliath, but they met with the Philistines again. They had short memories. I don't understand. And then they're yelling back and forth. And keep in mind, Jonathan and Saul are the only ones that have armor and a sword. Nobody else in the Israel army had swords and armor. And you're going to go. King says, "Let's go fight a battle. Let's go fight a war." Wait a minute, King. You got a sword. You've got armor. I got a staff. That didn't stop David, did he? He had a sling. He just borrowed Goliath's sword to cut off his head. Anyway, Jonathan sees the Philistines, and he tells his armor bearer, "Come on, let's go. We're going to cross the valley and climb this cliff." And as they're crossing and climbing, his armor bearer says, "Well, why are we doing this?" Jonathan says, "Well, the Lord, I think, wants us to do this. Perhaps He will be with us." Now, if I'm his armor bearer, I'm going, "Whoa, wait a minute. Perhaps? I need a little bit more certainty than just perhaps." Not for Jonathan. 100,000 men. And he's taking on all 100,000. And there's a ruckus happening in the middle of the night, early dawn area. And there's Jonathan going to battle with the Philistines. And he climbs the cliff. Man, he's in battle. Everybody wakes up. "Look at Jonathan. Let's go." They didn't have any. They charged. God exploded in that situation. I want God to explode in my life. It's an act of worship. You might support the United Way, but that's not tithing. You might support the Crisis Pregnancy Center, but that's not tithing. You might support missionaries at work in their mission field, but that's not tithing. Here's the principle. Whatever I want God to bless in my life, I need to put Him first in. That's the principle of tithing. God is a giver. And He wants me to be a giver. And look at Proverbs 3. Honor the Lord by giving Him the first part of your income, and He will fill your barns with wheat and barley, and overflow your wine vats with the finest wines. Give the first part, not the leftovers. Gina and I learned a long time ago, give Him first. The first thing we write out pretty much is our tithe check and then our bills. Because if we do it the other way around, we won't have enough for our bills. It's just the way it works. Notice I'm not wearing a Rolex. Notice that the newest car I'm driving is a 2008 Buick, which we bought for my kids. This is not about getting rich. This is about your needs being met. There's one more last point, and I know I've gone over. Stay with me. And if you're a workaholic, this is the hardest thing. But as a workaholic, you need to get this principle. It is, enjoy what I have. Enjoy what you have. Enjoy what God has given you. This is the principle of contentment. The principle of contentment. Ecclesiastes 6:9, it is better to be satisfied with what you have than to always be wanting something else. It does seem like we violate this verse quite a bit, doesn't it? It is better to be satisfied with what you have than to be wanting something else. We always want something else. People are busy, so getting more and more, they don't even have time to enjoy what they have. You don't need to raise your hand, because confession is good for the soul, bad for the reputation. I don't want to soil your reputation. How many of you have a shed or two filled with things you thought you had to have? I'm just saying. How many storage rooms could you fill up if you had unlimited storage capacity? The syndrome is like this, okay? People go out and get overextended. Meaning their yearnings exceeds their earnings. They buy a house that they can't afford. Actually, more house than they can afford. They buy a car better than they can afford. They overspend. They get all kinds of credit debt, and then they go out, both husband and wife, to work, to hustle to make ends meet because they bought more than they could afford. And there's constant tension, constant frustration, constant fatigue, because we're always trying to keep up with everybody else around us. And pretty soon, now listen, some of us have to hustle quite a bit just to make ends meet, okay? Gina and I lived in a couple of areas. We lived in the Bay Area. We lived in southern Orange County area of Southern California. And we can attest there are people who lived on life's cutting edge. If they sneezed wrong, they would be in bankruptcy court. That's how fine a line they were living. And this is what this is talking about. If some of you are saying, man, we're working pretty hard just to make ends meet, I get that. This is not to guilt you in this area. But this is the idea of our earnings, our yearnings exceeding our earnings. There's constant tension and constant frustration and constant fatigue. And all we're trying to do is keep up. And pretty soon we get tired. And our relationship begin to fizzle. We don't have enough time for each other, much less the kids, because we're always busy trying to earn the money to pay for all the things that we've bought. There are homes all over this country filled with things and kids and no parents. And that's what some things we saw in our ministry in those areas. Listen, if you're a parent, and it's easy for me to say now that I got grandkids, But you need to hear this. Kids don't need things. Kids do not need things. They need parents. If you're watching online, hear that. They don't need things. I'm watching a 1-year-old climb into a box having the time of her life for 3 hours. I'm watching 4-year-olds with bubble wrap. They don't need things. Well, I'm trying to give my kids quality time. They don't need quality time. They need quantity time with you. Why do our grandkids want to stay at our house all the time? Mom and Dad comes to pick them up. Stetson, can I stay here? You know what Gina does on Tuesdays and Thursdays when she watches the kids? You know what she does? She watches the kids. Nothing in the house gets done. I come walking in the house and I'm stepping all over kind of things. And I'm not talking about kids, but things that the kids got out. Why do they want to stay with us so much? Actually, her more than me. Why do they want to stay with her? Because she gives them quantity time. And you know what? Quantity time turns out to be quality time. Side note, sorry about that. See, here's the problem. We rationalize, which is a temporary solution. And we use temporary solutions for permanent resolutions. That shouldn't be. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be constant with what you have, God said. Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. This one thing, His love never fails. Oh, Pastor, come on. Are you telling me these things work? These 5 principles, do these really work? Hey, don't turn off the channel yet. Stay with me. That goes for all of you too. Does this really work? Absolutely it works. But let me contrast the world's order of things and God's order of things. Look at here. What most people do is what? The world says you go out and make money. You go out and earn it. Understand, God provides you what you earn. Therein lies the difference. Well, they're both the same. No, they're not. You think you're working for yourself, and God is giving you the provision to work and make a living. Then the world comes along, and guess what they do next? They enjoy what they earn. And as a Christian, we are to give back to God what He's already given. He's providing for you anyway. Might as well practice what we preach. And actually, we ought to follow the example of God. For God so loved the world that He gave. Just anything? No. He gave His one and only, begotten of God. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever would believe in Him shall have everlasting life. Shall not perish, but have everlasting life. But no, the world's enjoying it. Okay? And then the world says this. Now you got to repay it. Why do you have to repay it? Because you've overspent to begin with. When God says to save it. Notice the order. God makes a provision. You give a portion back to God. And then what's God say? Take a portion and save it for yourself. Save a portion to yourself. Now, I didn't talk about this. You have to decide about this. But if I give God 10%, shouldn't I give 10% to me? And invest it. No wonder why we don't have any money when we go to retire. Oh, and then we're too busy repaying it because we can't save anything. So, should you have any left, they say save it. Well, if you see, the world's already behind the power curve here. They're already out. And what God's saying, reduce your debt. First thing you do is He's making provision. You give it to Him, save some for yourself, and then start reducing your debt slowly. Start reducing your debt slowly. And then 5, the world says, now, if you got anything left, go ahead and give it. And God's saying, go enjoy what I have given you. Do you see the difference here? God wants us to enjoy what He's given us. We've been very fortunate in our lives to have good health, so that we can enjoy the fruits of our labor with our grandkids. You know what? We don't have to worry about them. We just fill them up with junk and send them home. It is a joy. It really is. Right, Sid? You get to spoil them, and then they go home and say, oh, Grandpa never lets me, they always let me do this. Well, you're not in Grandma's home. So come to our house, son. We'll take care of you. It's called a bribe, but nevertheless. Isaiah says this, why spend money on what does not satisfy? Why spend money on what doesn't satisfy? The root of your financial problem is a matter of values and trust. What do I value and who do I trust? Listen to what Job says. Have I put my trust in money or felt secure because of my gold? Does my happiness depend on my wealth and all that I own? If so, I should be punished, for it would mean I had denied God, the God of heaven. Would you pray with me? Will you trust God this morning? I'm going to start this morning praying for all of us. Father, I don't know the situation of the people who are here today, but you do. I know that some, if not many, are experiencing financial stress and difficulties. And as they follow your principles, I pray that you will miraculously turn around their finances in such a way that they will know that you are their God. I know we don't get in debt overnight, and getting out of debt doesn't happen immediately. But Father, I just pray and ask you to replace that debt with dedication to do the right things, to replace the pressure with peace, to help us all to get out of the hole and onto your pathway of what we would call financial freedom and success. Now I'm going to ask you if you would pray this prayer with me. I prayed for you. Now pray for yourselves. Something like this. Father, I want to follow your financial principles. Forgive me for spending more than I make. Forgive me for unwise purchases. Help me to get back on track with your plan. Today I commit myself to your financial principles. With your help, I'm going to start keeping better records. I'm going to learn, Father, to plan my spending. And with your help, I'm going to learn to save for the future. And I'm going to put my trust in you in all that I do, particularly my finances, by returning the tithe back to you. Help me to enjoy what I have, Father, and what you have given to me. Jesus, I invite you to be a manager of my life. I want to trust you, not just with my finances, but I want to trust you with my future and with my life. And I pray this in your name. Amen. I'm going to ask you to stand. If God spoke to you about your finances, you just need to come to the altar and turn that over to God. That's fine. You can create an altar right where you're sitting. But there's something about making an effort. And I encourage you to make that effort. If you're looking for a church to belong to, this is a great church to belong to. If you're looking for a change in your life because you want Jesus in your life, we want to be a part of that as well. Just because I'm singing doesn't necessarily mean I can come down. We've got 2 other singers here that can help us sing. So if you come forward, I will come down with you, okay? So let's sing together.